Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the New Media Podcast. I'm your host, Ya. We hope you enjoyed our last episode, even though it was a very, very long time ago. But, as always, today's going to be an even better episode. I got the whole crew with me. Everybody's in the house today. And today we're going to keep it very short and sweet for you guys in our return episode. I know we have a lot of NFL free agency moves that we have to cover since the month of March has passed us, and now we are in April, 2 weeks away from the NFL draft from today. And of course, we'll just go ahead and talk a little bit about biggest winners, biggest losers. Talk about teams that went under the radar, made some moves, underrated, and we'll keep it pushing from there. But of course, as always, before we get started, temperature check. How's everybody doing?
I mean, it feels good to be back. It's been a while, but I'm ready to recap free agency. We've had some big moves, some underrated moves, and a lot to talk about. So it's good to see.
It's good to be back, man. This NFL offseason, they've been pretty wild. There's been a lot going on. A lot of teams made some adjustments. A lot of teams took some dives. A lot of teams had to do some stuff to fix their contracts and their money issues. And very excited to talk about it. Draft's coming up real soon, so let's get to it.
Hey man, I'm very excited, just as you guys are, and one of my team was one of the few teams that were very, very active at the free agency start. We made a lot of moves, made a lot of acquisitions in the market. We also acquired another first round pick from the Houston Texans, and we're looking to use that in the draft in a couple of weeks. But of course, as always, it's great to be back. Getting back into the flow of things. And with that being said, let's go ahead and just get started. Let's jump right into it, man. Biggest winners coming out of this NFL free agency so far pretty much has wrapped up. All the moves that teams needed to make have been made. So who do you guys believe are the biggest winners in your guys' eyes?
I mean, I'd crown them as like my biggest winners, but they're definitely up there. And let's be honest, we're not really surprised about how good their GM is and Howie Roseman. But I think the Eagles, they kind of won this offseason. You lose a pillar in a guy in Jason Kelce, and you lose a guy in Fletcher Cox, and they ended up extending Lander Dickerson. They went out and got Bryce Huff, and then you signed Saquon Barkley, who I feel like this Eagles team, if they're able to really lock in, I feel like last year was kind of just an odd season for them where, it kind of looked good at times, and then we just kind of fell off the ropes for them. I feel like this year coming in, you lose a pillar like Jason Kelce, but, they're nothing short of offensive linemen. They have a ton on that team, and you go out and you get yourself a pass rusher who, to me, if you look at the numbers, he was basically putting up Hassan Reddick numbers. I don't think production-wise there's a huge difference between the two. There's some reports coming out that Hassan Reddick was actually chasing sacks, and it's kind of to the detriment of the team. But overall, I think, I wouldn't say that they're far and away my winners, but I definitely feel like people are underrating the fact that, they lose pieces, and they ended up getting Bryce Huff, and they ended up extending Lander Dickerson, and they went out and they got Saquon Barkley. So they're definitely one of my winners.
To speak about the Eagles for a little
for
bit.
Me, yeah, we can go ahead and speak about the Eagles.
I want to. The thing is, every other move that they made, aside from signing Saquon Barkley, I'm a fan of. Going out and trading Hassan Reddick, bringing in Bryce Huff, and acquiring some other pieces. But signing Saquon Barkley is just a big iffy to me, just based on the fact that the contract they gave him, 3 years, $37 million. And we saw Miles Sanders do good 2 years ago. We saw DeAndre Swift do great last year. I'm not sure if there was like a true big need, to go out swinging for the fences and to bring in a guy like Saquon. Is that just me, or
Swift really that great? Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
I think Swift was great with the amount of touches he was getting.
I don't know if I would consider Swift great. I'm not gonna lie. I
mean, when it comes to the end zone touches and everything, right? He gets to the 2-yard line, he gets to the 3-yard line, and then he lifts Jalen Hurts.
He kind of left a lot on the table as a runner. Like, I think, DeAndre Swift has his issues as a runner. I think he struggles with vision. I think that he struggles playing through contact. I think a guy like Saquon Barkley, we saw Saquon Barkley, what was it, 2 years ago, when the Giants made, the playoffs. We saw that Saquon Barkley in the first 8 games, and they still had a bottom tier offensive line. We saw that version of Saquon Barkley, and I just feel like having a guy that's actually an explosive runner. Miles Sanders, if he was able to find success, and we saw how he looked like in Carolina. I mean, completely lost his job. And then DeAndre Swift, he started off kind of hot, and then he kind of fell off the ropes. But he's securing yourself, an elite running back who I feel like he's a guy that just needs that offensive line around him. I think he can still perform to that capability.
I don't know. For me, I feel like the Eagles, you can plug and play running backs in that team. We've seen Sanders, like Yahya's mentioned, he had a good year. Even Swift, with the amount of touches and the looks he was getting, I still felt like he had a good year. I just feel like even Boston Scott and the other guys that come in for the injured players, they show up for the running back, for the running game. So for me, I feel like it's a plug and play for them. A lot has to do with their old line. I'm with you. I don't know about the Saquon thing. I don't know about the Saquon signing. I feel like
but it is.
the additions,
The thing is, I'll go ahead and give him the benefit of the doubt because obviously Saquon is a lot more talented than those guys, and so instead of having to rely heavily on Jalen Hurts in the passing game or when the running game isn't going, I think Saquon Barkley is going to be able to unlock he's going to be able to take this offense to extremely new heights. The ceiling, for this team is higher than it would be for if they had Miles Sanders, if they had a DeAndre Swift. So I'll go ahead and give him that.
They did get back the safety. I'm blanking right now from
CJ Gardner-Johnson. They did 3 years, $33 million. They got him back from the Detroit Lions this year. So that's a good plus. Still believe they need help in that cornerback room, but at the end of the day, they made some solid moves. I can't fault them for any other move they made. They did what they could, but that Saquon Barkley one was just a little bit iffy for me when they made that move. But Saquon Barkley still has some gas left in the tank. He's still a top 3, top 2 running back in this league, and he's going to elevate this offense a lot. But I think they could have definitely used that money on some help in that cornerback room. But it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
That's what I was just going to say. But yeah, for me, I think the two teams that won this offseason, one, I'm going to say the Bears and how they were moving this offseason. I like their pickups and additions to, support Caleb Williams coming into that team, especially getting DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen, picking up another setter, picking up Gerald Everett, having that 9th pick. They're re-signing Jalen Johnson. I forgot who else they kept on the defense. I know who else did they re-sign? There was a couple other guys that they kept, and they had a phenomenal defense last year. But offensively, just setting up Caleb Williams for a future. Bringing in Keenan Allen with DJ Marty there and DeAndre Swift. Phenomenal offensive team right there. If they can get that offensive line down, I think they have a great year. Great year coming up this year. And then the second team for me is just the Texans, building on what they built.
Before you jump on the Texans, let's speak about a little bit about the Chicago Bears. As we all know, Justin Fields did get removed from this team. He got sent to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 6th round pick. It's the Justin Fields era in Chicago is officially over. The team that they're building right now is the team that should have been built for a guy like Justin Fields, but that's neither here nor there. Caleb Williams now, no excuses for him to come in and fail. There's absolutely no excuses for him to not come in and show up and at least contend for a playoff spot. There's no excuses now. They brought in absolutely every piece that they need.
Keep in mind the rookie franchise record for the Bears is 2,900 yards and 12 touchdowns or 11 touchdowns. But the guy might break that week 9. Come on here.
I have no doubt that he'll break that in his sleep. But
I just feel like it's just a bunch of Justin Fields fans that are just salty about the whole. All I'm saying is, just give him 3 weeks and everybody's gonna completely forget him. If they already haven't, they probably already have forgotten Justin Fields. But give him 3 weeks and it's gone, bro. Everybody's already gonna forget about Justin Fields. Sure, people can make the argument, well, they should have been building around Justin Fields, but I mean, they already learned their mistakes, and there's no point in keeping a guy who hasn't really shown you that he's that quarterback that's worth building around. So they decided, let's go all in this top 1 prospect that we're going to end up getting. So, I mean, I don't really blame him.
He's never had a team like this ever. He's never had a team. Keenan Allen and DeAndre Swift, and they were able to re-sign Jalen Johnson. They've surrounded Caleb Williams with all the pieces necessary. They're probably going to use the draft to help that offensive line issue out, but there's no excuse for Caleb Williams not to come in and ball out. And they still got DJ Moore, of course, so he's got all of the weapons that he needs to go out and be successful. But Big H, I'll go ahead and let you carry on with your second team, the Houston Texans.
Houston, Texas, man. I was very high on them last year. Very high on CJ Stroud. And, they built a great team last year, with a bunch of young guys and everything. And I feel like this year they went into the offseason. They went to go get some veteran leadership on the defensive side of the ball. And, they came back, picked up Joe Mixon, another veteran running back, some leadership on the offensive side of the ball. And, you got one of the elite receivers in the game. He's not probably top 5 anymore, but he's in that range from 5 to 10. He's between that, and you pair him with a guy like CJ Stroud on that type of offense. I think Diggs is going to have a great year with them, with Tank Dell right there next to him, with Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz. There's another team right there that I just felt like, this offseason, they're just setting up their quarterback for another great playoff run, hopefully, that he can have. And defensively, they picked up some great players too. So, Texans, shout out to them. I feel like they're going to have another great season. I feel like, they worked a lot this offseason to build the team that they have right now.
I think the whole idea for this Texans team was pretty much there's 4 years left on CJ Stroud's contract. These next 2 years, they're pretty much trying to swing for the fences, trying to compete for a Super Bowl. They feel like they have the pieces. They feel like they have the roster. And if things don't go well in the first 2 years, a lot of these guys that they've signed in this free agency, they'll be off the books by the time that CJ Stroud's contract's up in 4 years. And so they're not necessarily, locking themselves in and hurting themselves by signing these guys to, max deals. They've given these guys 2-year deals. I mean, Stephon Diggs, the guy they traded for, had 4 years left on his deal, but somehow, some way, they chopped that deal in half. And after this he's pretty much on a prove-it-year deal, or just a 1-year deal with this team. And if it doesn't work out, no biggie. They got nothing to lose for it. The Buffalo Bills ended up getting like a 2nd-round pick for him, so they're probably gonna look like winners if he ends up walking from Houston. But Houston's gonna be just fine, just knowing that the fact that they still have their 2 receivers and Nico Collins and Tank Dell. My only issue is, Stephon Diggs, and wherever he goes, he always, the diva in him that doesn't, stop. Everywhere he goes, he's always got some sort of issue, whether it's, targets or, complaining about, not being the focal point of the offense. And, he's coming into a Houston Texans team, where they were made it to the 2nd round of the playoffs. They added him not out of like desperation. They just added him just so that they can, have a 3-headed snake with him, Tank Dell, and Nico Collins. So I'm interested to see, what happens when CJ Stroud drops back and Stephon Diggs is not his first read. It might be Nico Collins, it might be Tank Dell. I want to see how long it's going to take for Stephon Diggs to just not turn into his old diva self from his time in Minnesota with us and then in Buffalo. But I agree though. Overall, the Houston Texans did make a lot of moves to help this team, even though they did lose a couple of pieces to us in free agency. Overall, they took a guy from us. We took a guy from them, bringing in a guy like Danielle Hunter on a 2-year, $49 million deal. The guy finished with about over 16 and a half sacks last year. That's a guy that could definitely help him as an edge rusher. And, bringing in Joe Mixon, that's a move that I'm kind of on the fence about. The Houston Texans, even last year, Devin Singletary was their lead back, but, Dameon Pierce was supposed to be the guy that was supposed to be their starting running back. But their offense isn't necessarily predicated on like the running game. It's more of just CJ Stroud dropping back and making plays. But, it's going to be interesting to see. Joe Mixon does bring that veteran leadership in the running back room. And so, it doesn't necessarily hurt to have him. I believe he doesn't have much left on his contract anyways. And so, overall, bringing in, re-signing Dalton Schultz as well, 3 years, $36 million. Overall solid moves for these guys. They're trying to, compete now and also set themselves up for when CJ Stroud's contract's up. They won't necessarily have, any issues paying him the max contract that's already well-deserved after year 1. But for me, if I had to go ahead and pick a winner, there's a lot of obvious ones. But the team that I'm looking for on my list right here are the Tennessee Titans. Those are the one team. That's the one team that I was looking at this free agency window, and I was like, these guys did make some solid moves from start to finish. Overall, they signed Tony Pollard 3 years, $24 million after losing a guy like Derrick Henry, who's been there for so long. And so Tony Pollard, even though he didn't look good last year as his first true year as a running back one, he has a new opportunity to be, to showcase his talents on a very young Tennessee Titans team. They signed Cheeto to a 3-year, $36 million deal to help out that cornerback room. They also made a splash at the wide receiver position. They ended up signing Calvin Ridley to a 4 years, $92 million deal. They also made a trade for L'Jarius Sneed from the Kansas City Chiefs. So for me, these guys, they understand that they play in a very tough division. You're in a division with the Houston Texans. You're in the division with the Indianapolis Colts. You're in a division with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so, you don't necessarily want to fall, too far behind the 8 ball. CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans, those guys are on the way up. The Indianapolis Colts with Anthony Richardson, those guys are on the way up as well. And the Jacksonville Jaguars have always been that team that's always been there. They've always been there. Even though they kind of took a step back this year, Trevor Lawrence didn't necessarily have the greatest year, but I'm sure those guys will be back, competing for the division as well. And so this is a very interesting division. It's a very competitive division. And, the Tennessee Titans did a very solid job at surrounding their starting quarterback, Will Levis, with a lot of pieces on offense. They paired up Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. And on the defensive side, they got L'Jarius Sneed and then they got Cheeto on the other side. And so, these guys made some very, very solid moves. I can't necessarily be, complain too much about these guys. These guys made very solid moves. And then for me, another honorable mention would probably be my team. I think we made a lot of moves at the very start of free agency. When I look at this list, I know we got the guy from the Houston Texans. Let me go ahead and just find it real quick. Jonathan Grenard, 4 years, $76 million. Then we signed Blake Cashman from them, 3 years, $52 million. Andrew Van Ginkel, 2 years, $20 million. Aaron Jones from Abdi's team, on a 1 year, $7 million deal. And Sam Darnold is currently my starting cornerback, which I'm not too very happy about, but I can live with it. In 2 weeks from now, I'll know who my future quarterback is. But for right now, Sam Darnold is the quarterback for this Minnesota Vikings team. But overall, I like the moves that we made. A lot of the guys that we gave a lot of money to are very young, and for the other guys that we signed on 3 years, 2-year deals, they're aging out low key, but at the same time, they're on that 27, 28 years old range. And at the end of the day, we're not, handicapping ourselves by overpaying guys to come join us. And so, I feel like we're setting ourselves for a very competitive rebuild. As I mentioned at the very start of this episode, we did acquire another first-round pick from the Houston Texans. And so now we have 2 first-round picks to play with in this upcoming draft. We'll probably use those 2 picks and another first-round pick to make a move up in the draft to get a quarterback. My opinion, I believe we should definitely stay put. But that's a conversation for another day. But aside from all of that, now that we've talked about the biggest winners, there's always got to be the biggest losers. Whether the team didn't make any moves or the team made stupid moves, we have to go ahead and discuss it, man. So biggest losers coming out of this NFL free agency window.
I mean, staying in the same division, I'd go with the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, you come off a disappointing postseason exit like that where you lose to Green Bay Packers. You'd expect them to be kind of aggressive, kind of looking to fix, the situation at hand. But, they ended up losing a bunch of guys and haven't really done anything. They lost their center. They lost Tyron Smith. They lost Tony Pollard. They lost Dorrance Armstrong. So it's just like at a situation where, what is like their activity hasn't even been there. Like, it's not even just about losing guys. It's like, what is their goal in free agency? Like, what are they attempting to accomplish? Are they going to be trading? Like, it just seems like they're just sitting idly and which is kind of odd for a guy like Jerry Jones. So, to me right now, they're the biggest loser just because of the lack of activity. So, yeah, I'm just surprised. Like, they lost like 6 people and that's it. Like, they haven't done anything else.
Yeah, I agree with the Cowboys take. I feel like the Cowboys are heading down the path that the Bills are with how their money is and everything, with all the players under contract and everything. They can't really sign too many people like that. They got people coming up for extensions. You got Michael Parsons, you got Dak Prescott, you got CeeDee Lamb, you got Dexter Lawrence. You got people that you got to pay. So for them, losing Pollard, losing Tyron Smith, losing the center, it's big losses for them. They really didn't fix much. So Cowboys for me is one of them. Another team for me that really didn't do much this offseason as well, or I felt like they should have done more, is the Chargers. I feel like they always be complaining about, hey, Herbert doesn't have this, Herbert does not have this. I feel like they didn't really go out into the offseason to fix a lot of stuff that they needed. They let Keenan Allen walk. they kept the guy in Joey Bosa, which hasn't performed much, and I feel like they should have cut him and kept Keenan Allen instead. But it's tough, and they really didn't do much on the offense. They let Mike Williams go. For me, yeah, the Chargers. I don't know this offseason, although they got Harbaugh, they haven't really done much. They haven't really done much to set up Herbert for the future. I'm looking at his receivers right now. Quentin Johnson as his number 1, Jalen Guyton as his number 2, Gus Edwards as his running back. The O-line still not functionable. There's a lot of stuff that they needed to do this offseason that they haven't done. So for me, Chargers is probably up on the list.
What's kind of interesting for me about that Los Angeles Chargers team and every move that they made so far in free agency is that you got rid of Keenan Allen. You got rid of Mike Will. Mike Will was expected. Keenan Allen was a little out of nowhere, but it happened. And now it's just like every mock draft that I look at, they have the Los Angeles Chargers trading back. And we're the team that's always in these mock drafts trading up to go ahead and acquire the quarterback that we want. But these guys can just sit put at 5 and take a wide receiver that they need. It's not going to be Marvin Harrison because we know he's going to the Cardinals, but Malik Neighbors will be right there for him. And so, kind of just, makes me question a little bit of what, their whole idea is, what their whole plan is. Because obviously going into the season with Quentin Johnston as your wide receiver 1 is absolutely disgusting. And Josh Palmer and Jalen Guy and all those guys, it's not a wide receiver room to be happy about. And especially if you're Harbaugh, you don't necessarily want to, start off on the bad foot and you return back to the NFL. And so, that's a team that obviously for me would be one of the biggest losers. The team that I'm kind of confused about, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, like I mentioned when we talked about the Houston Texans, everybody and Titans as well. That division is very competitive, and these guys didn't necessarily go out and re-sign or sign anybody that's supposed to be very impactful. The Gabe Davis for 3 years, $39 million. You guys all know how I feel about Gabe Davis. I am not a fan of him as a wide receiver 1 or a 2. He's suited as a wide receiver 3 at best, but as a 2, it's non-existent for me. And as a 1, don't even think about it. After that, you trade for Mac Jones. You re-sign Ezra Cleveland to a 3-year, $28 million deal. Mitch Morse, a guy who was decent in Buffalo, 2 years, $10 million. But outside of that, they gave Darnell Savage 3 years, $21 million. But not a lot. And Eric Armstead as well, 3 years, $51 million. Not a lot of moves that kind of scream out like, these guys should be considered as winners, or these guys have had a successful free agency window. But for the Jacksonville Jaguars, it's just a little bit confusing to me as what's going on over there.
It's a bit worrying how good the division seems to be getting. I mean, you have the Titans, obviously. You already talked about all the moves they made, and then you have the Colts coming back with Anthony Richardson being healthy, and that team is young. And then on the other side, like the Texans, they came off a really successful year, and they added a bunch of pieces. So it's just like, what is the game plan for the Jaguars here?
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to compete, and going into this season, or not this season, but going into last season, these guys were supposed to be the favorites to win the division. And we didn't know what to expect about this Houston Texans with CJ Stroud. We didn't know what to expect with the Colts. We kind of had an idea of what to expect with the Titans. We expect them to kind of fall off the grid, but we didn't expect, Will Levis to look good, towards the end of the season. And so, they're looking around, in a division where they thought they were sitting very comfy and all these other teams were falling off. These guys kind of, just sat back and didn't make any crazy moves. They, last year they had, Calvin Ridley after, they made a move for him in mid-season 2 years ago. But, now it's just like, what's left of this team, what's the idea? What's the whole game plan? And that's what we're all confused about. But, aside from these guys, Big H, you might not like this, but, another loser that I have is, your Seattle Seahawks. And, my question to you would be like, what's the whole plan for you guys? Because you could tell me your plan better than I can. Because when I look at the free agency moves that you guys made, there's not a lot of moves there. And, in the Mike McDonald era, I kind of expected a little bit more, especially on the defensive side, especially with him being a defensive coach. It's not really, moves for you guys to be making. There's not a lot of moves that you guys made so far. So I just want some clarity on that.
Not a lot of moves. What's that?
Have you guys made any moves?
No, we made a
Leonard
couple moves, but it
Williams,
hasn't really
you know,
been
3
Leonard
years,
Williams. We
$64
signed
million.
the
Trading
Jacksonville
for Sam
cornerback. I
Howell.
forgot his name. The
Hmm.
What
Jacksonville
was it?
cornerback
Rayshon
we
Jackson?
picked up.
Rayshon Jenkins?
Rayshon Jackson, yeah. It wasn't that much moves. I feel like it was more of him coming in and actually try to clean the defensive side of the ball, try to clean house of all the players that we've been had in the past. Like guys like Diggs getting removed, Jamal Adams, Bobby Wagner, a couple other guys getting removed. I feel like, he wants to bring a new identity to that defensive team, and he wants to start fresh. We didn't jump gun on a lot of players this offseason. I feel like, guys like Patrick Queen that were available, a couple other middle linebackers are available, a couple other safeties that are still available, or that were taken like C.J. Garner-Johnson or Justin Simmons that are still available. I feel like we could have went after, but I don't know. I feel like he's more focused on the offensive side of the ball. I feel like he wanted to attack, fixing up that O line, getting some more guards into the team, but we haven't really made much moves this offseason. We saved some money, but we'll see how we go into it to next year. I feel like it's going to take a couple years for him to actually find the true identity, for him to find the right pieces for his type of scheme and everything. And that always takes time when a new coach comes in. Immediately we're not going to come in and bam, 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 get what we want and put into place. So I feel like it's going to take some time, but we'll see what he does. I feel like he's a phenomenal coach.
Oh, 100%. I think what you're saying does make sense. It's gonna you can't just necessarily come in and make a billion moves because at the end of the day, the roster that you guys have right now isn't currently a Mike McDonald roster. It's a Pete Carroll roster.
Yeah.
And so you can't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of contracts that have been given to guys that maybe Mike McDonald isn't a fan of, and it's kind of hard to get rid of those contracts. A guy like Jamal Adams isn't there no more, and that was a Pete Carroll guy. So I do understand that. So it does take a little bit of time. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
But aside from all of that, are there any teams that have that would be considered winners but have flown under the radar in NFL free agency so far?
I mean, like it's not like I would definitely say like the Packers signing Xavier McKinney is not a bad move at all especially for a position that was kind of a position of need. I mean, we've struggled with the safety position for like 2 years now with Darnell Savage and a bunch of other guys, and so signing one of the better young corners in the league on a deal like that is definitely a plus. And then the whole Aaron Jones situation, replacing him with Josh Jacobs, like I don't know, depends on what version of Josh Jacobs that we're expecting to see. I still think he's a very talented running back, but that's not too shabby either, picking up a guy like that. So it wasn't too many moves, but a guy like Xavier McKinney is definitely one worth highlighting.
One team too that probably say will go under the radar. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers. Getting Russell Wilson for that contract, $2 million, they're only paying him. Taking the chance on Justin Fields for a 6th-round pick. Who knows? It might pay off. It might not. And then they got Patrick Queen, right?
They did. They were the winners.
So you adding Patrick Queen to that defensive side of the ball with T.J. Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick. It's a three-headed snake right there in each level of the defense. From the front to the back to the back end. So I feel like them. A couple players here and there. I feel like they had a low-key good offseason as well.
Not gonna lie,
that whole NFC North, AFC North, they love switching players.
Yeah,
a lot of players are going team to team to team, in that division.
But a big loser that we really haven't really talked about, kind of Buffalo, lost
the Bills.
Yeah, they lost Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White. Micah Hyde is a free agent still. Who else? Gabe Davis, I think, signed somewhere else, right?
Yeah, he signed with the Jaguars.
And then what's his name? Leonard Floyd.
Leonard Floyd with the Niners.
Floyd. They lost their own line too. I forgot what was in there. I think they lost
Mitch Morris went to Jacksonville. A lot of these moves were kind of expected, though.
Yeah, it was
because it's just like their window to win a Super Bowl closed this past season. So it's just like a lot of these guys that they had, either their contract was up or it was just a lot of bad contracts. They weren't necessarily playing up to their contract. And so, you got to make the tough decision. They have to eat up a lot of cap. But, now it's just like, these guys, I'm not too sure how good they're going to be. We know Josh Allen is great, but with the supporting cast that he has right now, it's not really looking too good for him, especially to compete in a tough AFC conference where a lot of these teams did get better. And, a lot of quarterbacks that were injured this past season are looking to come back with a retooled roster. But for me, a team that we didn't talk about that I think did make a very solid move is the Atlanta Falcons going out and signing Kirk Cousins. I know there's a lot of talk, a lot of rumors, bringing in a guy like Justin Fields to Atlanta, but the Atlanta Falcons took a different route. They took they took a different approach by signing a guy like Kirk Cousins on a 4-year, $180 million deal. I hope one day in life I have an agent just as good as Kirk Cousins' agent, because this guy's made so much money, and a lot of people don't necessarily view him as some sort of top 5 quarterback, but the contracts that he gets are up there with all these top 5, top 7 guys in the NFL, especially with the guaranteed money. But well deserved for my guy. I'm very excited for him to have a new start with the Atlanta Falcons. At the end of the day, Kirk Cousins can still ball, and being in a division, with the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, these guys have an opportunity to make, they have an opportunity to win their own division. At the end of the day, the Saints are going to be the Saints with Derek Carr leading the way. And, the Carolina Panthers did make some moves to help their guy Bryce Young out by bringing in a guy like Deontay Johnson. But it's going to take a lot more than just bringing in Deontay Johnson for the Carolina Panthers to be competitive again. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were also, a very solid competitive team, and they were also able to retain guys like Baker Mayfield and Antoine Winfield Jr., and they also re-signed Mike Evans as well. But for the Atlanta Falcons, you bring in a very established quarterback, a guy that can sling the rock. Guys like Drake London will be successful. Guys like Kyle Pitts will be good. And with a new head coach getting away from Arthur Smith, we all know Bijan Robinson is just a beast waiting to be unleashed in that backfield. And Kirk Cousins is going to be able to utilize him as a little in the dump off game, and the run game. He's going to be a monster. And so, for this Atlanta Falcons team, they've had a sneaky good defense for the last couple of years, especially last year. And now you bring in a quarterback that can extend drives and put points up on the board. It's going to be real interesting, man. And Darnell Mooney signing with this team, he's going to be their vertical threat. Kirk Cousins, he's got a lot of weapons to work with. And they also do have another opportunity to go ahead and grab a receiver in this upcoming draft. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out for the Atlanta Falcons. But even though the contract doesn't look extremely great, I believe that with the way the contract is structured, all the money is front loaded in the first half of the year and the first half of the contract. So that way, in the later half of the contract, Kirk Cousins isn't necessarily getting as much of. And they can also have a clause. They have a clause in this contract where this first 2 years, after that, if it's not looking too good, you can go ahead and cut them and won't necessarily hurt their cap space. But overall, a lot of teams made moves, and I wish we could cover it all. A lot of teams.
I like the Atlanta pickup with Kirk Cousins. I really do. I feel like they needed a guy to throw the rock on that team 100%. Like, they lost a lot of close games last year if you look at it, and the reason why they couldn't get the ball downfield or Desmond Ridder couldn't make big plays in big time moments. A guy like Kirk Cousins, man, he might move him to the top of that division.
Yeah, that's the thing. I can respect the approach they took, because everybody's gonna say, well, just go out and draft a quarterback in this upcoming draft. It's not easy to go out and hit on a quarterback and have him be like a CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson in year one. Obviously every quarterback that comes in has potential to be great if you're getting picked in the top 10, but more times than not, we've seen guys get picked in that top 2, top 3, top 5 that have turned out to be busts in the NFL. So it's just like these guys said, we're not gonna go out and use our draft pick to go out and get a young quarterback. We can go ahead and sign Kirk Cousins and then utilize that draft pick however which way we want. We can go ahead and get an edge rusher. We can go ahead and get another receiver. We can go ahead and trade back and get more draft capital. So, these guys set themselves up pretty well, to number one, be competitive in their division. They have a shot to win the division with them and the Buccaneers. And also, to still stick with their draft capital, not have to give up a lot to get the guy that they want. And, you can't be too mad at that, man. At the end of the day, you got to tip your hat to that. That's a lot of good credit, coming out of that Atlanta Falcons franchise. I got to give them the respect for that. But with that being said, though, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this episode up here. Very short and sweet. I know we have a lot of NBA news that we have to get around to this upcoming week with the season coming to a close this Sunday. But any final words before we go ahead and sign off here?
It's definitely interesting to see what happens on draft day. What are teams targeting? Who are they looking to draft? Whether they want to make any moves, any trades. So, it's definitely going to be excited to see that.
Yeah, man, I can't wait for the draft day trades, man. I know there's a couple teams down there looking for a quarterback that want to move up, so we'll see what happens.
I haven't been this excited for an NFL draft in a very, very long time. I wasn't even crazy excited when we drafted Justin Jefferson not too long ago. That's because it was so unexpected, and I didn't expect the Eagles to whiff on a pick like that and take Jalen Reagor right before our pick. But I'm so excited just to see what we do at the number 11 pick and number 23 pick, whether we move up to go ahead and draft our guy, whether we stay put and utilize those 2 picks and get a quarterback and get another position of need. I'm really excited, and the thing is, one day I wake up and I say, maybe we're gonna go ahead and draft JJ McCarthy at number 5 if we trade up. And the next day when I wake up again, it's a completely different feeling. I just want to stay put at 11 and 23 and just go from there. But as the draft comes closer week by week, we'll be able to cover it all. I know we'll probably have another at least one mock draft cooked up before the NFL draft. But once that day comes, we'll be here to talk about it all. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and close out this episode here. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. We really appreciate your love and support. We'd really appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at New Media Podcast. And for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, all of our social media handles will be at the end of this video. And if you're listening to us on Apple and Spotify, if you go to our Instagram page at New Media Podcast, you'll be able to navigate yourself to all of our social media handles there. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now H, now that's overkill.